I opened the bedroom door with flowers still in my hand. My overnight bag dropped to the hardwood floor with a soft thud. Through 6 months of chemotherapy, through losing my hair and my strength, through nights I thought I wouldn't see morning, I held on to one image. Coming home to my family. The doctors said I'd beaten it. Stage 3 breast cancer, and I had won. I was Jessica Carver, 38 years old, and I had survived. But the woman lying in my bed wasn't me. She wore my robe, the soft blue one Matt gave me for our 10th anniversary. Her blonde hair spread across my pillow like she belonged there. My children stood beside her, and my daughter was laughing. "Mommy," she called out. Not to me. To her. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. My voice had survived everything. The surgery, the poison they pumped into my veins, the dark nights alone, but now it disappeared. The room tilted. Matt turned. His eyes met mine, and I saw something worse than anger. I saw relief, like I was a problem that had finally solved itself by leaving. "You weren't supposed to come back," he said. "My name is Jessica Carver. Before all this, I was a teacher. I loved my job. Every September, I'd stand in front of new students and watch their eyes light up when they understood something for the first time. I had 2 beautiful children. Sophie, who was 9, and Marcus, who was 7. I had a husband I thought loved me. I had a life I thought was solid. Then the pain started in my left breast. A small ache that wouldn't go away. The mammogram showed something dark. The biopsy confirmed what I already knew in my bones. Cancer. Stage 3. The doctor used words like aggressive and treatment plan and 6-month protocol. I heard fight for your life. I did fight. I spent 6 months in a medical facility. My hair fell out in clumps. I lost 30 pounds. Some days I couldn't lift my arms. Some days I couldn't remember if I'd already eaten breakfast. But I never stopped thinking about Sophie's soccer games or Marcus's birthday or Matt's face. I thought survival meant getting home to them. I was so wrong about what waited for me. The woman's name was Sandra. I would learn this later, but standing in my doorway, she was just a stranger wearing my clothes. She sat up slowly like she had all the time in the world, and smiled at me with teeth that looked too bright. "You must be Matt's wife," she said. Wife. Past tense. Sophie pulled on Sandra's sleeve. "Mommy, can we have ice cream?" That word, mommy, cut through me like the surgeon's knife had 6 months before. I looked at Matt, waiting for him to correct her. He didn't. His hand touched Sandra's shoulder in a way that made my stomach turn. I walked downstairs without speaking. I couldn't trust my voice. In the kitchen, everything was wrong. Sandra's coffee mug sat by the sink. Her shoes lined the hallway. Our family photos had been moved to make room for pictures of her and the kids. My daughter's artwork still hung on the refrigerator, but someone had rearranged it. I was no longer in the center. Matt followed me down. "We need to talk about this," he said. "You can stay with your sister until we figure things out." "Figure out what?" My voice came back, small and broken. "You being sick made things complicated," he said. "The kids needed stability." I thought, I survived death. But apparently not my own family. Nora, my sister, held me while I cried. Her spare bedroom smelled like lavender and safety. Outside her window, the world kept moving. Cars drove past. People walked dogs. Life continued, indifferent to the fact that mine had shattered. "You need a lawyer," Nora said, not for the first time. She brought me tea and sat on the edge of the bed. "Jessica, you can't let him keep the kids." "I just got home," I whispered. 6 months ago I was saying goodbye. I thought I was dying. Now I'm supposed to fight him in court. "Yes," she said simply, "because if you don't, you'll lose them." That night, alone in her guest's bedroom, I scrolled through old family photos on Instagram. Matt had always loved posting pictures of our perfect life. Me with the kids at the beach, the 4 of us at Christmas, Sophie on my shoulders. But as I scrolled backward, I noticed something. Sandra appeared in the background of a photo from 8 months ago. 8 months. Before my diagnosis. Before any of this. She was in the corner of a shot from my birthday party, talking to Matt's brother. I had no memory of her being there. I zoomed in. The way Matt looked at her made my hands shake. He wasn't planning to leave me because I got sick. He was already planning to leave me. The cancer just made it convenient. Janine had been my friend since college. We taught together. We got coffee every Friday. She knew me. Or I thought she did. When I called her, she hesitated before answering. The hesitation was the worst part. Jessica, she said carefully, I didn't want to tell you this while you were sick. Tell me what? Matt told everyone you left. He said you couldn't handle motherhood. He said you chose to walk away from the kids. The words entered my body like a disease. My own husband had erased me from our story and replaced me with lies. I wasn't the victim of a medical crisis anymore. I was a villain in a story he invented. My friends thought I had abandoned my children. That's not true, I said into the phone. I know, Janine said quietly. I knew you wouldn't do that. But Jessica, half the people believe him. I hung up the phone and opened my journal. The page was blank. I picked up a pen and wrote, He buried me alive. Those 4 words sat on the page and I understood something important. I could lie down and let the dirt pile on top of me, or I could start digging. 2 weeks after I came home, I returned to the house to see the kids. Matt opened the door like I was a stranger asking for directions. They're upstairs, he said. Don't stay long. They're adjusting to their mother's abandonment. Except I hadn't abandoned them. Sophie ran to me first, then Marcus. I held them both, breathing in the smell of their shampoo, the warmth of their bodies. How did 6 months feel like a lifetime? Mommy's here now, I said. I'm so happy to see you. Dad said you had to go away, Sophie said. He said you were sick and couldn't be a mommy anymore. The words came from my 9-year-old daughter like she was repeating a lesson. Matt had rewritten our reality. He'd taken my suffering and turned it into abandonment. He'd taken my survival and made it a betrayal. That's not true, baby, I said. But I saw Matt watching from the doorway, and I saw the kids' confusion. I forced a smile. Mommy loves you so much. I'm always going to love you. Later that night, alone in Nora's guest room, something inside me changed. Not broke. Changed. The person I had been before, the woman who trusted, who believed in loyalty, who thought love protected you, that woman was gone. The person who replaced her was quieter, harder, and she had a plan. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old papers. His name was David Chan, and he looked at me with the kind of pity that made me angry. Anger was better than despair. Without evidence of abuse or serious negligence, he can claim primary custody, David said. He tapped his pen against his desk. He's already established himself as the primary caregiver since you were hospitalized. The court tends to favor continuity for children. What if I told you he's lying about why I was gone? Can you prove it? David leaned back in his chair. Do you have witnesses? Documentation? I had neither. I had only the truth, and the truth wasn't enough. If you want to win, David said, you need proof. And patience. This isn't quick, Jessica. This is a marathon. I looked at him across the desk. I've already run through hell and back. I can handle a marathon. He gave me a small sad smile. Then we start gathering evidence. Everything. Every text. Every interaction. Every lie. That was when I decided I wouldn't just fight Matt. I would bury him in truth. The private investigator's name was Robert Garcia. And he didn't ask many questions. He simply nodded when I showed him photographs of Sandra at our house, texts from Matt to numbers I didn't recognize, and the timeline of my hospitalization. I need to know everything, I told him. When they met. How long? If there was anything illegal. 2 weeks later, Robert called. I found something, he said. Matt and Sandra have been together for at least 14 months. She had access to your joint bank accounts 9 months ago. There are withdrawals that don't match any receipts. He stole from me? More than that, Robert said. I have copies of bank documents. Your signature appears on papers you never signed. Specifically, a home refinance 6 months ago. While you were in treatment. I sat down. The room spun. While I was fighting for my life, he was forging my name. Not out of passion. Not out of desperation. Out of calculation. I opened a folder on my computer and labeled it, Evidence. Inside, I began building a case against the man I married. The documents Robert gave me told a story. Matt had refinanced the house when my signature, my name, my identity, all forged. He'd taken $80,000 out of equity. The money moved to accounts I'd never heard of. Accounts shared with Sandra. I copied everything. I photographed every page. I created backups on 3 different devices. I was methodical. I was thorough. I was someone else now. Someone who understood that love and trust were luxuries I could no longer afford. I looked at the paperwork and thought, he built a castle on lies. I'm going to pull out every brick. The court filing came 2 days later. I met with David in his office, and we filed motion after motion. Financial review. Custody evaluation. Investigation into fraud. Each document was a brick removed from the castle. Matt tried to play it cool. He filed his own motions claiming I was unstable and making false accusations. He paid for his own lawyer, paid for by money he'd stolen from me. The irony was bitter. But I had proof. I had patience. And I had nothing left to lose. The first hearing happened on a gray Thursday. The courthouse was cold. I wore a navy blazer and kept my hand still on the desk. Matt wore an expensive suit, probably paid for with stolen equity, and leaned back in his chair like he owned the room. His lawyer argued that I was emotionally unstable and making serious accusations without foundation. He suggested I was acting out of bitterness from the separation. Then David handed me the documents. I walked to the judge and placed them on his desk. Medical records proving my surgery dates. Photographs of forged signatures. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. Everything. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady. I have proof that my husband forged my signature on a property refinance while I was undergoing chemotherapy. I have documentation of unauthorized access to our joint accounts. I have evidence that these transactions occurred while I was hospitalized and unable to protect my own interests. The judge's eyes moved across the documents. Sandra, who had come to support Matt, turned pale. She suddenly needed the bathroom. This court is ordering a full financial review, the judge said. We'll need independent auditors. It was a small victory. But as I walked out of the courthouse, I held my head high. I had thrown the first brick. Matt's parents called me 3 days later. I answered because I wanted to hear what they would say. You're embarrassing this family, his mother said without greeting. Dragging Matt to court, making accusations. It's vindictive. Your son forged my signature, I said quietly. I held my phone steady and pressed the record button. That's nonsense. Matt would never. He did. And I have proof. But that's not why I'm calling you. I'm calling to tell you that Robert Garcia has documented your involvement in hiding his assets. Silence. You moved money to your personal accounts. You helped him hide the refinance paperwork. You've committed fraud. My mother-in-law hung up. But I had her on tape. And Robert had already found their bank transfers. That night David called. They're panicking, he said. Your mother-in-law retained her own lawyer. She's trying to make a deal. What kind of deal? Full financial disclosure in exchange for immunity from prosecution. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone I didn't recognize. Someone harder. Someone who understood the cost of love and loyalty. No deal, I said. Let them be afraid. Sophie left the drawing in my mailbox on a Tuesday. It was folded in half with my name written on it in her careful 9-year-old handwriting. Inside she had drawn our house. In the living room, a stick figure with blonde hair stood yelling. Another figure held something red, a bottle maybe. 2 small figures cowered in a corner. Tears drawn as blue lines down their cheeks. I recognized myself in the smaller figures. My children were scared. I called David immediately. I have new evidence, I said. Visual evidence from my daughter about conditions in the home. Jessica, he said carefully. We need to be careful about coaching her or using her testimony in a way that could be seen as manipulation. I'm not coaching her, I whispered. She's telling me the truth. That night I wrote in my journal. They know what's happening. They need me to stay strong. I framed Sophie's drawing and hung it in my bedroom. Not as an accusation. As a reminder. Every time I wanted to give up. Every time I thought about backing down. I looked at those blue tears and kept going. I invited Matt for coffee at a neutral location. Starbucks at 2 in the afternoon, a public place where he would feel safe. I brought my phone and set it to record. My lawyer said I had every right. Colorado was a one-party consent state. I needed him to confess. He came looking tired. He ordered a black coffee and sat across from me like we were old friends catching up. I want to talk about custody, I said. I want us to find peace. His shoulders relaxed. He thought I was giving up. The thing is, I continued, I've been thinking about what happened, about why you did this. Jessica, I want to hear it from you, I said. Why? I survived. I beat cancer. Why couldn't you wait? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. A short, harsh sound. You were supposed to die, he said. The doctors said 50-50 odds at best. We planned everything around that. Sandra and me. We were going to be together. I was going to keep the house, keep the kids, keep everything. But then you got better. You ruined the plan by surviving. My hand shook beneath the table. But I didn't flinch. I sat there while the man I married told me he had planned my death. I sat there and made sure every word was recorded. When I left that coffee shop, I had proof of everything. I didn't post the recording online. Not directly. Instead, I anonymously created a social media post about a woman who fought cancer while her husband planned to replace her. I changed the names. I kept the truth intact. Within 24 hours, it had 10,000 shares. People were furious. This is fake, some commented. Who would really do this? But others recognized the pattern. Women who had been betrayed. People who understood how cruelty could hide behind a marriage license. The posts kept spreading. Local news picked it up. People started asking questions about who this woman was, where she lived. My community was small. Not small enough to be anonymous, but I didn't need to be anymore. Within a week, Sandra had quit her job. She couldn't handle the whispers, the stares, the judgment. She disappeared from the coffee shop where she worked, leaving no forwarding address. People said she'd moved away. I wrote in my journal, funny how the truth doesn't scream. It echoes. A local reporter named Michelle Chun called my lawyer's office asking for a statement. David consulted with me first. She wants to do a full interview, he said. Feature story about medical trauma and betrayal. If I do this, I said, it has to be after I win custody. Agreed, David said. But Jessica, you need to understand what you're doing. Once you go public, your life changes. Permanently. I thought about Sophie's drawing. I thought about Marcus calling Sandra mommy. I thought about the voice in my head that had kept me alive through chemo telling me to fight. Let's do it, I said. Matt panicked. The same day Michelle Chun published her story about a mysterious woman fighting for justice, Matt sent me a text. You're destroying me. Then another. I'll take the kids and disappear if you don't drop this. Then another. You were always weak. This won't end well for you. I saved every text. I forwarded them all to David and Robert. More proof. More evidence. The desperate threats of a man losing control. The courtroom on the day of the custody hearing was packed. Michelle Chun sat in the back with her notepad. Other reporters I didn't recognize sat nearby. This wasn't just a family matter anymore. This was a story. David presented evidence methodically. The forged documents. The bank records. The recordings. The texts. Each piece of evidence was a brick removed from Matt's castle, and the castle was collapsing. Then I testified. I talked about my diagnosis, my treatment. I hope that I will come home to my family. I talked about finding Sandra in my bed. I talked about my children calling her mommy. I talked about discovering the betrayal while I was still recovering from chemotherapy. The courtroom was silent. Matt's lawyer tried to argue that I was unstable, that my accusations were revenge-driven, that the recordings were obtained illegally. But Colorado law was on my side. And the evidence was overwhelming. The judge called a 15-minute recess. During that time, Sandra stood up and walked out of the courtroom. She didn't come back. Matt's confidence crumbled like a building with its foundation removed. When the judge returned, she didn't have to say much. I'm ordering a full investigation into Mr. Carver's financial crimes and custody fraud. Pending the outcome, temporary custody is awarded to Mrs. Carver. The children will remain with their mother. Matt's face went white. You're destroying me, Matt said as we left the courtroom. I stopped and turned to face him. No, Matt. You did that yourself. I just made sure the truth came out. The investigation took 3 more months. During that time I had my children back. Full-time. Sophie and Marcus slept in their own beds. I made them breakfast. I helped with homework. I was their mother again, not a phantom, not a memory. The official ruling came in November. Matt was found guilty of fraud. He was sentenced to community service and ordered to repay every dollar he'd stolen. His parental rights were suspended pending further investigation into his fitness as a parent. Sandra was nowhere to be found. The judge awarded me primary custody with Matt having supervised visitation only. Not because I was perfect, but because he had forged documents and planned his wife's death while pretending to care about his children. I had won, but winning felt different than I expected. It felt less like triumph and more like breathing again after nearly drowning. Robert Garcia called me with one final piece of information. I found something about Sandra, he said. A restraining order from 2019. Her ex-partner filed it. Cited psychological abuse and manipulation. How bad? I asked. Severe. He documented patterns of behavior that align with what you've experienced. She targets vulnerable people. Use them. Discard them. David filed the information with the court. Sandra was identified not as Matt's girlfriend but as a predator. The court issued a warning to other women, one she would never see because she disappeared from everyone's life. Justice isn't always neat. Sometimes it comes in fragments. But it comes. The local media coverage exploded. Woman survives cancer and marital betrayal, the headlines read. How one mother fought back against fraud and infidelity. My story was everywhere. Some people saw me as a hero. Others saw me as a cautionary tale. I gave one final interview with Michelle Chun. I didn't scream about Matt or Sandra. I simply told the truth. I don't want revenge, I said. I want peace. I want my children to know that they're safe. I want them to understand that sometimes people fail you, but that doesn't mean you have to fail yourself. Matt lost his job. A tech company decided they didn't want a man convicted of fraud in their employ. His friends disappeared. His reputation, carefully built over years, evaporated in weeks. He moved to a different state. I heard he was living with his brother and working cash jobs. I didn't celebrate. I simply closed that chapter of my life. Sophie ran to me first, then Marcus. They had chosen to stay with me, and the court had made it official. We stood in the kitchen of our home, my home reclaimed, and I held them both. Mom, Sophie asked, are you better now? I looked at my daughter's face. I thought about the 6 months I'd spent fighting cancer. I thought about the weeks afterward fighting my husband. I thought about the moment I opened a bedroom door and found my life destroyed. I am now, baby, I said. I really am. That night I made their favorite dinner. Pasta with the sauce Marcus liked, salad with the fancy dressing Sophie preferred, garlic bread that turned golden and crispy. We ate together at our table, and nobody called anyone mommy except me. And it was genuine. Matt came to my door on a cold January evening. He looked hollowed out, like someone had taken everything he was and left behind only the shape of a person. I'm sorry, he said. The words were small and insufficient. I stood in the doorway, not opening it wider. I can't forgive you, Matt. Please, he said. I lost everything. I know, I replied. You lost everything because you chose to. You don't need my forgiveness. You need to live with what you did. And maybe one day, when you understand the gravity of that, you'll become someone better. I closed the door gently. Not with anger. With finality. That night, I wrote in my journal for the last time. Some doors close so new ones can open. I walked through my bedroom, the same room where I'd found Sandra, and opened the curtains wide. Sunlight poured in, bright and honest. I changed the sheets. I painted the walls a soft gray. I brought in new furniture and new plants. I erased her from this space completely. This time, I said softly to the empty room, the light stays. I did the same throughout the house. New art on the walls, some from local artists, some from Sophie and Marcus. I reorganized the kitchen the way I liked it, not the way Matt had arranged it. I reclaimed every inch of space. Nora helped me, and together we transformed the house from a place of betrayal into a home again. The photographs came back down from boxes. The family memories returned to the walls. But this time they told a different story. Not about what was lost, but about what I'd survived. The invitation came in late February. They wanted me to speak at the Women's Resilience Conference in March. They called me a survivor, an inspiration, a symbol of strength. I almost said no. But I thought about Sophie's drawing. I thought about every woman who had called my lawyer's office asking for help, for guidance, for hope. I said yes. Standing on stage in front of 200 women, I told my story. Not to inspire them to seek revenge, but to inspire them to seek truth. I talked about fighting cancer and then fighting betrayal. I talked about the moment I realized that survival wasn't just about beating disease, it was about refusing to disappear. The applause was thunderous. But the most meaningful moment came after, when women approached me in lines and whispered their own stories. Women who had been betrayed. Women who had lost custody. Women who thought they were done fighting. I listened to everyone. I started a foundation called Second Life, dedicated to helping women who were recovering from both medical trauma and family betrayal. We provided legal resources, counseling, financial guidance, and most importantly, community. We built a network of women who understood that survival was only the beginning. Sophie and Marcus grew into the kind of children who understood resilience not as a concept, but as a way of life. They saw their mother rebuild. They saw her stand up against impossible odds. They saw her choose the truth even when it was easier to lie. But the real joy wasn't in the foundation or the speaking engagements. It was in the small moments. Breakfast with my kids on Saturday mornings. Watching Sophie play soccer without worry that I would miss it. Teaching Marcus to ride his bike without the shadow of abandonment hanging over us. I closed my journal on a warm spring afternoon. The page was full of the entire journey. From diagnosis to betrayal to resurrection. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and I saw someone I recognized again. Not the woman I was before. Someone better. Someone stronger. They buried me while I was still breathing, I whispered. But they forgot I was planted. And I grew. I closed the journal gently and placed it on the shelf beside Sophie's drawing and the locksmith's receipt from when I changed the locks. 3 documents. 3 moments. 1 journey. Sophie and Marcus played in the yard outside my window. Their laughter was real and untouched. I had given them that safety, stability, and a mother who refused to disappear. The morning sun caught the edge of my computer screen where the Foundation's website displayed the faces of 50 women we'd helped that year alone. I had survived cancer. I had survived betrayal. And I had become someone who could help others do the same. That wasn't revenge. That was resurrection. That was hope. That was everything.